it is a very hush, like this topic of conversation. So it should actually be normalized where people, like have education on sex and they know what are the, like the hygiene and health conditions related to it. I think that should be talked about. So, like the pros and cons of having sex at a young age should actually be understood by the teens, and likewise they can take decisions whether, like 16 is the right age or 18 is the right age.
In cases of pregnancy, how is a 16-year-old who is a child herself supposed to handle the responsibility of having another child? I don't think that in any way is right. And there are medical restrictions as well that a 16-year-old might not be able to confer to. And then comes society. We all say that we've gone way beyond what the society expects us to do, but we haven't.
I think that before discussing the idea of age of consent, the social context of India should be taken into consideration. Uh, Obviously, in Western countries, the age of consent is lower. It's not 18, it's 16, as low as 13 even. But here in this context, in the Indian social context, it is important to understand the idea of consent itself, which is like an idea that has not been discussed enough. So yeah, the idea of consent not being just a momentary yes or no kind of a idea, but actually it being a constant process of reaffirmation that goes on throughout. This kind of education is not available to the marginalized communities of India. Sex as a topic has always been tabooed over India. Like there is no proper structure of sex education in our country. So to discuss the age of consent first, I think the need of proper sex education is important. The need for education on what consent is important.
Actually, I think it's a various debatable issue, and I think we should concern about that the age 16 is not that much age to conceive for a woman, because it's also harmful for their health, not only for the girl, not only for the women, but also for the child who will be born in their home.
मुझे लगता है कि 18 should be the legal age, because before 18 women cannot be that much mature or a boy cannot be that much mature, so they cannot take the decision to have a physical relationship, or otherwise there can be many consequences. So 18 should be the legal age.
The dynamic process of consent, I think all this should be considered and talked about, because sexual violence is really common among Indian women, especially of young age, and it's very easy to manipulate Indian youth, especially because of the kind of sex education or the lack of it that they get. Sex has been dealt with taboo, especially coming from older people of family, who the youngsters rely on for information, for vital information regarding their own sexuality and personal choices. I think from that point, there is a lot of taboo that goes in, there is a lot of fad misinformation that goes in, and I think that makes it very difficult to have a proper sexual education. And if a person doesn't have a proper sexual education, doesn't have a proper idea of consent, I don't think the age of consent debate will be of much use. I think
Yes, it's a growing age. 16 should be the age of consent, but that is pointless, and that opens women up to much more violence and much more sexual instances of sexual assault if that is not complemented with positive governmental action, right? Like sex education, like proper sexual hygiene, education about sexual hygiene. And in marginalized communities, there should be ensured that if there is a case of sexual assault, it should be judged not by the influence of the man's family, not by the influence of caste or class, but by the victim's narrative, but by the survivor's narrative.